making feature-length documentary films, and that involved a lot of writing and a lot of narrating as well. So actually narrating the films. When you make a long film, you have to really get deeply inside the topic, and you get deeply inside the story, and very importantly, you try to figure out how to take a massive information, very complex information, and very complex emotions, complex psychologies, and you have to sort of wend them together and weave them together to construct a story that basically makes sense, but not only makes sense, but then has to emotionally engage the audience, and that's the hard part, and that's the true story, which would take usually up to about 1 year to idea of the complexity. But my storytelling, if you like, chops two sides to the storytelling word, and this research, because this is what allows us to basically stories in a way that's actually coherent to the audience. Okay, and then the final stage is storytelling, and this is whether it's on screen, stage, and page. I missed a comma there, and this is the actual letting rip flow part. Okay, and very briefly, this goes through a series of drafts, effectively, a series in film. In writing, you go through first draft, second draft, third drafts, and you go through constructing hooks and endings and what have you. Actors go through a similar process, but we go through what are called ugly drafts. Yeah, these are I won't use the word that's commonly used by writers, but basically drafts that are horrible. They stink. You hate them. Okay, but it's a necessary part of the first thing you're creating in order to create something interesting. You have to allow the ideation, inspiration, and the outlining stuff that you've done before to start to actually manifest through you on screen, stage, or page. And then you go through better drafts. Often you will have good hooks. You start to think about endings connect to hooks, and then you try to sort out the middle of the work. Okay, but again, when we're doing this process, it's not a linear process. We're very often hopping one to the other. So for example, I might be out in the local woods having a walk, and a great story hook will come to my mind. I try to capture it really quickly, and I will actually write it before I even necessarily or the story architecture. Yeah, or sometimes I'll have a vision of a bigger story, and I'll try to capture that as in outline, and then at some later stage start to flesh out the story. I hope that makes sense. But the point is that in the process of story construction and storytelling, there are a number of stages, and we flip around those stages. And it's important to understand that, because when we come to the tools which we choose to do that with, we need to kind of know which type of tool am I going to use, if we're going to use tools, and why are we using it at this stage, okay? And there's one last caveat, okay, which is don't please let it get in the way of what really matters and over time. And this is something that stories and storytelling can do in a way, I think, that no other you can tell children, well, you need to actually, meditate or reflect more or think about this or whatever. And those, in my opinion, honestly, are simply words. But when you engage children in stories and they come to understand and perhaps overcoming a mistaken belief from the past, they are learning an extremely important lesson. Okay, so that's a kind of apps and software serve around. Yeah, tools and apps and software basically are simply things we use in order to actually tell better stories, to construct better stories, and to perhaps engage in the mission of. Okay. Right, so let's go through the tools. First of all, awareness tools, right? Remember I talked about ideation and inspiration. Well, the fact is, of course, that inspiration and awareness is endless. There is no end point to this, and so the only way to put a framework on this is to look at the relationship between you and your story. Okay, and as I said a moment ago, it's about internal transformation. Like this is because when we're talking about ideation and inspiration, we need to kind of understand what's going on when the ideation and inspiration actually happens. And as I say, it's to do with the internal process, okay? And so therefore, if we are doing things like meditation, and I did Vipassana in the past and still do, or I now use things like Trip in virtual reality, which is a mindfulness or whatever's in front of me. We can dunk ourselves in books and inspire things like phrase, which within about 2 or 3 minutes will go right across the internet, and they will pull in all manner of synthesized and detailed information on a particular topic very, very rapidly. So, for example, I actually ran one before this presentation. I actually ran it yesterday to understand, okay, out there on the internet, the most important resources, the most important information, and 3 minutes about how you would do that. Otherwise, you'd have to go through Google and start searching around and browsing each individual hours. Well, a process that used to take hours can now take literally a handful of minutes. Outlining, very, very important, right? Now, the app I'm using right now is wonderful, both as a thought construction app and tool, and both as a presentational tool, I would argue. I mean, I think it's quite a nice way to present, right? And to get your ideas together. Mind mapping is, for my money, mind mapping is at the heart of good story construction. I mean, I'll literally put it that strongly, because mind mapping allows you to work associatively with the thoughts and ideas that you're trying to put inside your story, with the storylines. And there's nothing like when it comes to story construction and to understanding what you've got inside your story and where the gaps are in actually telling the story. This thing is called iThoughts. It's a story, or you take a story that's already there, and basically you do an exercise with the kids, involve them in AI as my dictation tool. Literally on smartphone, that you get 10 hours a month for free. It's using artificial intelligence and natural language processing as part of the way it operates. It's an incredible app. It's an incredible tool. Basically, you can literally just dictate your thoughts or your ideas, and it is transcribing those ideas, right? And pretty accurately in my experience. Well, so at a stage where you actually have a scene in mind, or you're trying to get some ideas down, dictation and things like Otter.ai can be incredibly valuable. Elon Musk talks about fingers being meat sticks. The problem we have is that our minds are working at an incredibly fast pace often, right? We have lots of ideas, lots of inspirations, really fast pace often, right? We have lots of ideas, lots of inspirations, lots of thoughts, but our fingers are incredibly slow to actually document those ideas and those thoughts. Well, this is where dictation comes in, because you can actually start to dictate down those thoughts and ideas, or that scene or that moment, incredibly rapidly, right, through using things like Otter AI. So that's a really useful tool. Grammar and style, despite an expensive education, I'm still a beginner on grammar and style, which is where things like Grammarly come in. These things that will actually basically check your grammar and style and give you suggestions on how it works. Absolutely golden, this thing, particularly for communicators, people who are writing business emails, or if you're writing business communication, that kind of thing. I'm not sure you necessarily want to chuck this at the kids, because you want them to learn the grammar and the style. But anyhow, as a storyteller, Grammarly is tremendously useful. And Pro Writing Aid is an alternative, but actually, having compared the two, in my opinion, Grammarly is much better. Okay. Now, the elephant in the room. which is artificial intelligence and natural language processing. This is going to change the way stories are constructed and told. I mean, it really is that big of a deal. And the kids that you're teaching now will be in a different world when they are adults in terms of artificial intelligence and natural language processing. In July of 2020, GPT-3 hit the open market. And basically this is an algorithm where they have put in 175 billion sentence parameters, and effectively the machines, neural networks, use that to construct effectively arguments in text. Now, there is actually a game, believe it or not, called AI Dungeon, which uses this algorithm. The AI will literally start to write the book with you. It's extraordinary, okay? And yes, it makes mistakes. Yes, it does crazy stuff. But more often than not, it actually comes back with amazing ideas, amazing storylines, amazing bits of dialogue, and very importantly, carries on the consistency of the story with you, okay? Now, this is just the beginning. And this, by the way, is an example of how this looked as you are actually writing, okay? This is just the beginning. Basically within a year or two from now, the next generation, which is 10 times more powerful than this, will be on the market. This is changing the world of communication and writing and storytelling. It's that big of a deal. And so therefore, one of the ways you could get into this with kids might be to look at AI Dungeon, have a look at it yourself at least, understand what it does. You can actually use it for free at a certain version. I'd certainly encourage you to go and have a look. If you're in the world of business or copywriting or writing for business, these kind of artificial intelligence things are coming on the market now. I personally use some copywriting ones called Copysmith, Copy AI. But basically, they are all at the moment accessing GPT-3. But in a year from now, it will be GPT-4, and within 3 years from now, honestly, this technology will be so sophisticated. I think it'll get to the point where it will challenge people to understand, was something written by a machine or was it written by a human? It's that big of a deal. And so, as the chess player Garry Kasparov says, he's written a book called Deep Thinking. The challenge ahead of us is to actually work with these technologies, right? And to figure out the way to use creativity, beauty, emotion, and our humanity with what will be incredibly powerful technology, right? But I just wanted to flag that at this stage because for storytelling tools, these will be a huge part of the future. Useful apps, screen recorders, things like Loom, which is free or very moderately priced, ScreenFlow, Camtasia, Screencast-O-Matic is good. You can have team plans, you could use it in an institution, and this allows you to do screencasting, video communication, and editing, right? So these are useful. Editing, things like iMovie, I won't go too much into that. Slide decks, obviously, a part of education and teaching, communication. And again, artificial intelligence is starting to make its way into this world as well. There's a free one, which is called Beautiful.ai, and various other kind of technologies, but they are all starting to build in AI in image selection and image suggestion. Yeah. The one thing about slide decks is that it can often be like watching paint dry. Okay, so I don't know. I mean, use them with care, use them with judicion, right? Faces are more interesting. Emotions are more interesting. So always keep that in mind as you're using these tools. And then, along with AI, the other transformative thing going on in the world of tools and apps for storytellers these days is virtual reality. I've already mentioned how my wife travel around the world in 3 dimensions. Well, there's actually an interesting with a classroom, because quite a lot of the educational apps are just boring. I mean, I don't think kids would engage with them very much, honestly. But things like this, I think, have more color. They have more engagement. I suspect that things like this might work better with kids. Getting them involved, in a story process needs to be checked out, right? Now I know we're almost out of time, so I will keep rattling through. And then finally, I've put together some resources which I'll share in the slides. But anyhow, that's my sort of little presentation on for communicators and teachers, and I hope that's been of interest. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I can take any questions if you like.
Thank you, sir, for that incredible sharing. Storytelling is essential to effective communication, and the tools serve the mission. Thank you for that. You reminded us that stories garner strong emotions and last the longest in the minds of the listeners. Audience, any questions that you would like to ask Mr. Paul?
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
I have a question for you. You have been in education for many years. What was really challenging the character?
I'm sorry, I'm hearing you. I'm hearing you really badly. I'm going to put headphones on. I'm going to try putting some headphones on and see if that improves. 1 second. Sorry, I had to climb around the back of my computer there to put these headphones in. Hello?
Am I audible now?
Yes, I can hear you. Yeah.
Yes, happy morning to you. I have a question for you. Hello?
Yes, hello?
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are. Please go ahead.
You have been BBC for many years. You would have found lots of challenges. You are saying that a storyteller needs to be should have a lot of inspiration. You have to use lot of tools like music, and you have to have a lot of ideas.
You don't need any of these tools. You literally don't need even one of them. The only thing you need, the three things you need actually for storytelling, in my opinion, are a heart, a mind, and a pencil and paper. That's it. That's it. That's literally it. The whole point of this presentation is to say, look, if you fancy using technology or an app, you're available. Yeah.
Yeah.
But do keep something in mind though, and actually this is a serious point and a very important point. My 16-year-old son, honestly, is learning as much in his education on YouTube as he is in the school. And I don't mean that as an insult in any way, okay? It just is the reality. If he's at one stage he was learning Japanese, at another stage he was learning about comics and manga, then he's learning about climate change, okay? Where do you think he's getting his information from? Answer, he's constantly browsing. The kids are absorbing information from, and that trend will increase, I think, okay? And so what we do as adults, in my opinion, is complementary to what is, we're there as guides and mentors. We're trying to put our wisdom and what have you with the kids, right? But we're working in an environment which is very different from when I was a child. Very, very different. And artificial intelligence and virtual reality are here now. It's not something in some near future or far future. They're happening right now, as I tried to explain in the presentation. And so, although we can and should use very simple tools, and we should teach kids to use their minds and their hearts and to use simple tools, we also need to be aware that these other things are around and try to get some exposure to that, in my opinion.
On a personal level, inviting them to hear their story and ensuring it lives up to expectations. Master this skill and you will be well on your way to becoming an effective communicator. Urges Mr. Gunashekaran, Director, ACE Innovation. Sir, in addition, we would like you to give...
Warm greetings, dear Mr. Paul. Good morning, warm greetings. Thank you very much for being a part of this event. Indeed, it's an honor and privilege having you amongst us today. Our association continues for a very long time to come. Thank you once again for the wonderful story. You're so very engaging and we thoroughly enjoy it. What a wonderful way to learn about the importance of storytelling in communication. Hats off to you and wishing you a great day ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been an honor to be here. I love working with you guys. And you know, I think something rather nice is happening here. So thank you again.
Thank you so much, sir.
For the invitation to be here.
Thank you so much, sir, on behalf of Tamil Nadu.
Thanks, Paul.
Wonderful.
Have a great day.
You too, everyone. Wishing you all a lovely day, and you know, stay safe. I think we are almost out of this coronavirus mess. So, you know, another few months of patience.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Good morning, good night. Today we are gonna talk about the tools used in storytelling. Right now is one o'clock in Panama, and I'm inside of a mountain named Cerro Azul. So if for some reason the internet goes for some seconds, it's normal here because there's no good signal. But I will try my best. Spanish is my first language. English is my second language. So I will do. I have 5 years telling stories all over Panama. But last year it was particularly hard because of COVID-19. So I made 2 different formats of storytelling. Online storytelling, as you can see on this picture, while I'm with the chroma key, and I'm online through Zoom, through Google Meet, through video calls, to YouTube videos, and to Instagram Lives. And to the other hand, I understand that it was very important for early childhood to get together. So I developed a program in the parts of the city, so children could meet to hear stories biosecurity. So because the parks are open and they could sit in different spots of the park and listen to the story, it was very, very, very. Both were challenging because we used to get together, hug, dance, make rounds, play, and now we have to be separate. This changed a little bit of the tools I used and the resources, but not the spirit and love of telling the stories. So that's why I put first these 2 images for sharing a little bit of the experience of constantly changing, but to remember the importance of our dreams or of our goals as teachers, as librarians, as people who love art, who love reading, who love books. So that was like the first thing I want to share. That I passed from being all the time on live plays with a lot of children. As you can see in this image, I used to tell, I always, well, most of the time I use books in my presentations, because for me as the books is very, very important. There are two kinds of storytellers who are who uses the books and who uh, tell the story by oral memory, and both are okay. I used to tell just oral because I sing and it was more, but most of writing and reading, I start using the books, because that's the way the children understand that all these stories are from books, and that it's important to learn how to read and to value the illustration of the books. And I also use puppets, as you can see there. We'll talk more about it later. And the other thing is about all new we made last year. It was a national Panamanian program with the Ministry of Education, with the support of UNICEF Panama, and we filmed like 1,020 videos of well, stories, but also all the stories have activities that parents could make with their children. So it was amazing. We choose the books for different subjects that help the early childhood to develop at home during COVID-19. So it was challenging. The other part that for me is very, very important as a storyteller is to donate these experiences to people that cannot access to their big shows or to private sessions. That's why I always well, right now I cannot go to the hospitals. Online I can go, but not in person. But I used to go a lot to the hospitals to share with children with needs, special needs, or that are in uses, AIDS for AIDS, children with cancer, and also to the parents that are in these situations, because the stories heal. For me, the stories are a powerful medicine for healing, and I saw how the children get better while we develop these sessions, and they look happier and they look with hope. And for me, that's very important. So always think as a stories as a tool, but for healing, for sharing, for creating community. And sometimes underestimate the power of the word, of our words, and the words are very powerful. If, for example, in Spanish, I don't know, and I don't know from where are you seeing this conference, but every word in Spanish have a meaning. And indigenous languages has this amazing thing that there are composed of small meanings and create a big meaning. In the day life here, we forgot the importance of the words, and in our daily practices as teachers, as storytellers, as librarians, as writers, We have to take uh, the words, the metaphor. We have to. So that's one of my favorite. So now I'm gonna talk about other tools. Well, I love, for example, you have to love the story. If you don't like the story you're reading, change the book. There's a lot of books in so many languages. If you don't like the story and you are pressured to read that story, it won't work. I mean, in my experience, you can, but you can get in love to a story. When you are facing a story that it's challenging for some reason, it's a good moment to ask yourself why this story is um putting me in this situation. What can I learn from this story? What can I learn from this character? When this story took place? Who wrote this story? Who is the main character? How can I how can I put this story in context with my culture? Do I have to change the names, or do I have to say quotes of the story? You and a space to go to a library or and have this all the time. Please, I want this story. I want this story. I want this story, because I love so much that story. Everyone again, I want it again until I say no more. I will change it, and then I tell other stories. Another important tool for storytelling, as I said, is the books. There are different types of books. Right now, I'm in a place named Cerro Azul. It's a mountain, so I'm not at my home. And you different kinds of book, like real books, and I can show to the camera. But here in the pictures, I tried my best. Different types of books. There are album books. Those books, as you can see, this one that is blue, that has like a sun and a character. There are those books that doesn't have text, or they have a little bit of text, just to guide through the story, guide you through the story. And those books are very practical for storytellers, because writing in the little bit of the comments, and then they disappear because I'm sharing the screen. But after that, I will read all. And there's a lot of way of creating album books. I think that creating books, it will be another lecture. We always have a story to tell, and we can use the elements of internet to draw the story if we are not illustrators. So don't be afraid of creating your own stories. I motivate you to draw or to use elements to create your own album books. And it's classic stories. They never disappear. They are also legends. Also, they will never disappear. They pass from generation to generation, and they are powerful because they are real. What I love, for example, I put here Red Riding Hood and the Wolf, because it's one of the stories that pass through cultures, that pass through generations, the learning and the changing. These are the kind of stories I recommend, because children use these stories to also face reality through stories. If I have a problem, rates give you a lot of powers, a lot of is late, and all the people are sleeping, so I cannot talk, like big. So all that situations, all that to be more calm, you want them to get sleep. So the time of the day is also an element that you can use for your storytelling. Another thing that for me is important is the cultural background that the audience have. All your cultural background in your stories, and to learn from your audience a little bit more. I have the experience in the International Storyteller Network to get to know different kinds of storytellers and to receive at my home different parts of us from the story. And also, as I say, the boys take care first or and in the end of telling of or having a session. Um, um, warm your voice. For example, I didn't warm my voice today, but try to warm your voice because when you talk a lot, you could get sick or. I mean, big sessions, you know, that's if you talk just one side, but always have that practice with your voice because the voice is the and the other element that is very important. You can